rain was relentless, hammering down on the pavement like a symphony of despair. I sat slumped in the corner of O'Malley's, a dingy little bar that smelled of stale beer and lost hope. My suit was wrinkled, my tie loose, and my shirt stained with coffee from a clumsy spill that morning, though I wasn't sure it mattered anymore. It had been the worst day of my life, the kind that left a permanent scar on your soul. The call had come at 9 a.m., just as I was settling into my desk. I knew it was bad news before I picked up the receiver. The HR manager's voice was too soft, too rehearsed. "Budget cuts," they said. "Nothing personal," they said. "We appreciate your contributions." But no amount of corporate jargon could mask the fact that I was being tossed out like yesterday's garbage. By noon, the contents of my desk were packed into a cardboard box, and I was out on the street, jobless for the first time in 15 years. It was raining then, too, a cruel metaphor, as if the universe had decided to mock me. I thought about calling Rachel, my wife, but decided against it. She'd been distant lately, her patience frayed by my long hours and dwindling paychecks. I didn't have to call her. She called me. "I can't do this anymore, Eric," she said, her voice trembling but firm. I knew what was coming. We'd been circling this drain for months. "I filed for divorce," she continued. "I'll send over the paperwork." "I'm sorry." That was it. No tears, no drawn-out explanations. Just a clean, efficient severing of the life we'd built together. I sat in my car for an hour after the call, staring at the steering wheel, feeling the weight of everything crushing me. So here I was, drowning my sorrows in whiskey at O'Malley's, the only place in town where no one cared if you fell apart. The bartender, a grizzled man named Frank, slid me another glass without a word. The amber liquid burned as it went down, but the pain was a welcome distraction. "Rough day," a voice came from the seat beside me. I hadn't even noticed anyone sit down. Turning my head, I saw a man who didn't quite fit the bar's atmosphere. He was impeccably dressed in a charcoal gray suit that looked like it cost more than my car. His hair was slicked back, and his dark eyes sparkled with an unsettling mix of amusement and curiosity. "You could say that," I muttered before taking another swig, not in the mood for small talk. He smiled, revealing perfect white teeth. "I'd say it's more than rough." He leaned in closer. "You've hit rock bottom, haven't you?" I stiffened, the words cutting deeper than they should have. "What's it to you?" He chuckled in a low, rich sound. "Let's just say I have a talent for recognizing desperation. And you, my friend, are radiating it." I turned away, but he wasn't deterred. "Lost your job today," he said, as if it were a casual observation. "And your wife too." "Now that's quite the double blow," he chuckled again. My blood ran cold. "How the hell do you know that?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he signaled to Frank for 2 drinks, one for himself and another for me. When the glasses arrived, he raised his in a toast. "To new beginnings," he said, his voice smooth as silk. I didn't move. "Who are you?" He leaned in closer, his grin widening. "Let's just say I'm someone who can help." "Help?" I scoffed. "Unless you've got a job and a time machine in that fancy suit of yours. I don't see how." The stranger's eyes gleamed. "Oh, I can do much better than that. I can give you everything you've ever wanted: money, power, love, a fresh start. All I ask in return is something you won't even miss." I laughed bitterly. "Let me guess. My soul?" I took another drink. He tilted his head, feigning surprise. You've heard this pitch before. But tell me, Eric, what's your soul really worth? You're miserable, broken. What if I told you that all of this—" He raised his hands and gestured all around him. "Your failures, your pain, your loss, could all disappear with a single stroke." I stared at him, half convinced I was hallucinating. The whiskey had dulled my senses, but there was something unnervingly real about him. "You're serious?" I asked finally. "Deadly," he said without blinking as he pushed a sleek black pen and a folded piece of parchment toward me. The paper looked ancient, the writing on it ornate and otherworldly. "All you have to do," he said, "is sign." There was excitement and anticipation in his voice. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the pen. My rational mind screamed at me to walk away, to laugh this off as some elaborate prank. But the darkness inside me whispered something else. "Do it," I heard in my head. It sounded like the stranger's voice. But how could it have been? His lips hadn't moved. It was a thought I had in my head. Wasn't it? "What's the catch?" I asked. "There's always a catch," he admitted matter-of-factly. "But wouldn't you rather live your life like a king, even for a short while, than waste away in obscurity?" I looked around the bar, at the peeling wallpaper and the flickering neon sign. This wasn't just rock bottom. It was the grave I'd been digging for myself for years. The stranger leaned in again, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Picture this. Tomorrow morning, you wake up in a penthouse. There's a 7-figure balance in your bank account. Then the phone rings. It's your dream job, begging you to join their team. Rachel, she's begging to come back. But fuck her. You're too busy deciding which of your many admirers is worth your time. This isn't a fantasy, Eric. This is real. I can make it happen." My throat tightened. It did sound like the perfect life. The life I had dreamed. The life I deserved. Hadn't I earned it? Worked my ass off only to get let go. Tried to save a failing marriage. I poured my heart and soul into everything. And what did as I get as a thank you? I got jack shit. As I reached for the pen, something inside me, something buried deep, made me stop. My mother's voice, soft and full of faith, echoed in my mind. "When you're lost, Eric, pray. God listens, even when you feel like no one else does." I dropped my head into my hands, closed my eyes, and began to pray. My words were clumsy, desperate, and tear-soaked. It was a plea for strength, for guidance, for a sign that I wasn't alone in this darkness. The stranger's smile vanished, replaced by a sharp glare. "Praying? To him?" he sneered, his voice cold and dripping with contempt. "Eric, don't waste your time. Do you really think he's going to swoop in and save you now? After all you've been through? Where was he when you lost your job? When your wife walked away? When you cried yourself to sleep, begging for just one break? He's not listening. He never was." I tightened my eyes shut, ignoring the mocking venom in his tone. I whispered another prayer, more insistent this time. The stranger's calm began to crack. His voice turned sharp, filled with agitation. "Stop it," he demanded, leaning in so close I could feel the unnatural chill radiating from him. "You think muttering those words will change anything? You think he cares about you? Look at your life, Eric. He's the reason you're here. He let you fail. He let you fall." I gripped the edge of the bar, my knuckles white as I continued to pray. "Enough," the stranger barked, slamming his hand on the bar. The glasses rattled, the sound piercing the heavy air. His composed demeanor slipped further, his face contorting into something darker, more feral. "Do you hear me, Eric? He does not care." His voice grew louder with each word, almost a roar. "Why waste your breath on a god who abandoned you when you needed him most?" I opened my eyes just enough to glance at him, his face twisted with frustration. I closed them again and started to pray again. "Eric, you're throwing away the only real chance you've got." His voice was no longer smooth and enticing. It was raw, jagged, desperate. "Look at me, Eric. I'm here. I'm offering you something tangible. A way out of this misery. God isn't coming to save you. He doesn't care if you rot in this bar or die in the gutter." I ignored him as my prayers grew louder, the words clumsy but filled with growing conviction. The stranger snarled, his voice dropping into something inhuman. "Stop it. You think he's going to help you? You're nothing to him. You're a speck, a failure, a man who couldn't even keep his life together. And yet here I am, offering you salvation. And you'd rather grovel to a deity who asks for your unwavering faith and devotion but offers nothing in return." I opened my eyes as he stood, towering over me as the stool was thrown to the ground, the shadows around him deepening, his eyes glowing faintly with a sinister light. "You're wasting precious time," he hissed, jabbing a finger at the contract on the bar. "Sign the fucking paper, Eric. Let go of this foolish hope. It's pathetic. You think you're strong enough to get through this without me? You're not. You're nothing without me. I raised my head, meeting his gaze. There was a calmness in me now, something steady and resolute that hadn't been there before. Then I felt something, felt like a hand. A fatherly hand on my shoulder from somewhere behind me. It was firm, but most importantly, comforting. If I'm nothing, I said quietly, then why are you so desperate? The stranger flinched as though struck, his eyes widening in shock. For a moment, the mask he wore slipped completely, revealing something monstrous beneath the surface. His perfectly polished exterior flickered like a bad signal, the illusion cracking and warping. You don't understand, he hissed, his voice a guttural growl. You're throwing away everything. He doesn't deserve your prayers. I'm the one who's here. I'm the one offering you a way out. I stood, pushing the pen and parchment back toward him. No, I said firmly. You're offering chains. The stranger's composure shattered. He bared his teeth, now sharp and gleaming like blades. The air around him seemed to vibrate with an unnatural energy, the shadows swirling like a living thing. You'll regret this, he snarled, his voice distorted, almost unrecognizable. You'll come crawling back to me when you realize he's not coming for you. And when you do, the price will be so much, much worse. I held my ground, meeting his gaze. I'd rather take my chances with him than spend a second chained to you. His fury exploded, a guttural roar filling the bar as the lights flickered and the shadows closed in. Then, as quickly as it began, the storm of his anger subsided. He straightened his suit, the edges of his form flickering one last time before solidifying. This isn't over, Eric, he growled, his voice low and venomous. And then, with a sharp snap, he vanished, leaving behind the pen and parchment. The storm outside had stopped. I looked down at the bar, at the empty glass in front of me, and for the first time all day, I felt something stir inside me, hope.